Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It is Wednesday, the 29th of August, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that easily online at weather.gov/Alaska. Give us a call on the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391, or find us on your mobile device, mobile.weather.gov. Type in your city, and you should be able to have a low bandwidth version of the National Weather Service forecast tools right at your disposal. Save it to your home screen and you'll be good to go the next time around. If that doesn't work for you, or you need some answers to questions you've always had about the weather, or perhaps some service that we're providing, feel free to email me anytime, david.snyder@noaa.gov, and I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. Let's take a look at fire danger across the region. With all of this wet weather, is there fire danger? No, not so much. No significant risk right now. Things are getting better and better. There are still fires out there, but the overall risk is not increasing right now, so the trend going away, and probably soon, as Mr. Percy pointed out just several days ago, this fire danger map probably will have seen and served most of its useful purpose throughout the season. So we can hope, but that also means winter is coming, right? And a look up north shows this broad, sweeping area of clouds across the north slope. That is indeed an early taste of winter, a winter teaser perhaps. As that drops southward and into the Brooks Range, there is an opportunity for some early season snow. And for areas along and east of the Dalton Highway, especially east, it looks like there could be a couple inches there with the next round of colder air that's dropping our way. There will be several waves after that, maybe as much as 2 to 3, perhaps even 4, as the door remains open to Mother Nature's cold for the late summer season there. And it looks like there could be about 2 inches there in the first time. The second time, maybe as much as 3 to 6. Behind that, maybe another 2 inches. And after that, things get a little bit more murky, right? So we want to keep an eye on areas across the eastern Brooks Range, especially along and east of the Dalton Highway. And if you're traveling back and forth on the Hall Road, or even if you have some flying plans, you'll want to keep an eye on the weather here the next few days. Of course, it is hunting season, so we urge you to be careful and be prepared if you're heading out into the Brooks Range for any hunting activities as well. Out to the west, this big sweeping curl of clouds is surrounding a Bering Sea low. That's down in the 980 millibar range. It's a decent low, and it's got some gale force winds on the south side of it, sweeping in some drier air. Not quite as dry as what the satellite picture is intending here, but you can see a lot of cloud cover making its way into the YK Delta, and with that, plenty of rainfall and lowered visibility. Some of the rainfall reaching as far north as Nome, as far north and west as St. Lawrence Island, and then into the Alaska Peninsula there. Behind that, you'll see some pockets of fog, with any clearing, I'm sure, as we head into the overnight hours. For southeast, we're still scrubbing away some areas of low pressure here. Again, looks fairly dry in the satellite picture, but there's still a low parked right about here. And if we turn on the surface features, you can see it's at about 1,011 millibars, and that front is moving its way into the Pacific Northwest. A few showers will continue to surround this area of low pressure, probably closer to the higher terrain, and folks like Hyder will likely see some light precipitation as we go forward. High pressure sitting across the interior. That's still holding the interior for now, but it looks like as we head into tonight and tomorrow, this will start to lose some ground. We've got colder air encroaching from the north. We've got a Bering Sea low pushing in from the west, and it's just generally unsettled across the northern Gulf Coast. So high pressure is going to lose this game, unfortunately, as we get in through the next couple days. But for South Central and for many in Southeast, it has been a okay couple days here, especially in South Central. The sun's been out fairly nicely today. Low pressure out to the west, again down to about 984 millibars. There's our cold front moving into the Chukchi Coast and Point Barrow. Areas of low clouds and rainfall along that boundary as it moves in. And as we get into tonight, you can see it makes its way into the Brooks Range, and there will be some areas of rain and snow with that. Now, will you see a lot of accumulation at the lower terrain? Probably not. But once you get up into the mountains, there's a chance that you'll see a couple inches of snow, probably east of the Dalton Highway, so be prepared for that. There are no watches, warnings, or advisories for any snow in the Brooks Range at this point. It would have to come down fairly hard and fast for that to happen. And right now, it looks like each round of those, each rounds of snow are kind of spread out over a longer period of time, so it won't be that intense, but that may be a shock to the system if you're not ready for snow just yet. Out across the west and southwest, we're expecting to see some rain and pockets of fog there from the Yukon Delta northward into Norton Sound. Eastward, we expect to see rain spreading into the central and southern interior, and generally into the upper Yukon Valley and the upper Tanana Valley. Like I said, around southern parts of southeast, don't be surprised to see showers lingering around Hyder and part of the Misty Fjords. And for the central and western Bering Sea, 992 millibars or better for most of the region. But notice the tight packing of the gradient here south of the Pribilofs and all the way to the west. Gale force winds are expected to continue in that region, and they'll continue pushing that wind and weather into the YK Delta as we get into Thursday. And if once again you're kind of scrubbing your eyes a little bit and saying, is that a thunderstorm symbol? Yes, it is. The upper level low pressure system, as we were talking about, and we'll talk about here in just a few minutes, will sweep eastward into the Talkeetnas. And with that, we might just have a small concentrated area that has just enough lift to produce shower and storm activity just north and west of Anchorage, Wasilla, and Palmer. So if that's the case and you hear the rumble of thunder, it's always a good time to take a break and head inside there if that's the case, and that should pass just as quickly. There might be some brief rainfall with that, and then across southeast, some higher terrain rainfall there, another trough of low pressure moving through the eastern Gulf. High pressure trying to set up a weak ridge across the region. This will stay fairly flat in its design across the central and western Gulf, and as such, this will probably work its way into the interior, but we'll keep our low pressure system right where it is as we get into Thursday and Friday. Notice not a whole lot of movement. Our ridge is still kind of right here. We have areas of light rain and drizzle, low pressure across southwest, and now one area has shifted eastward into the eastern parts of the Copper River Valley and the upper Tanana Valley, and we still have areas of rain and snow potential across the North Slope and especially at elevation in the Brooks Range. So once again, hunters, beware. Prepare for the weather to change and to get a little snowy as we go into the weekend. Across the north, up around, let's say the Denali National Park in south and west, we're probably looking at some breezy conditions there, areas of light rainfall and showers. Rainfall across the YK Delta, showers into the Kotzebue Sound region and the Chukchi Sea area. But east of that, again, is where the cold will remain, especially at the higher terrain. High pressure is building in out west. This could run around 1,030 millibars or so. Underneath it, we will likely build in some areas of fog and stratus. So not a whole lot of sunshine expected with that high building into the west just yet. But it is going to be changing up the weather and opening the door for more cold across the North Slope. And some of the eastern interior should keep an eye on this as well. Let's take a look at low pressure. Oh, one thing to point out real quick here. There's a shower and thunderstorm symbol there. That is what we were looking at the Talkeetnas. That is shifting eastward into the outer coast of southeast. So not to be forgotten, this weather is starting to push toward southeast as we get into Friday afternoon. Most areas will be looking at rainfall, but with the upper level low center passing through, there could be just enough instability to spark off another shower or lightning strike there very close to the Sitka area and surrounding region. So keep an eye on that again, mariners especially, as we get into Friday. Now let's take a look at temperatures here. Here we go. Low temperatures on Thursday morning, lower 30s across the North Slope. Most areas from Point Barrow eastward Kaktovik are going to be looking at sub-freezing weather. Just barely, but cold enough to freeze the water. Temperatures up in the Brooks Range will be cooling down as well for the Kotzebue Sound region, mid-40s, upper 40s for the Norton Sound area. Bristol Bay temperatures in the upper 40s to about 50, Bethel 47. South Central temps in the upper 40s. As you get into Prince William Sound, a little bit closer to the 50-degree mark, upper 40s and lower to mid-50s for central and southern, especially outer coast areas of southeast. Pribilofs close to 50 degrees, maybe just shy. Dutch Harbor and Alaska, about 50 degrees for you. Afternoon on Thursday, still cold up north. Temperatures come up just a little bit, mid to upper 30s there for Prudhoe Bay, Dead Horse out toward Wainwright, almost 40 degrees in fact. 52 around Kotzebue, 54 for Nome, low to mid 50s for most of the southwest coast. South Central could have a decent temperature day, anywhere from the upper 50s and lower 60s for Cook Inlet, 61 in Kodiak, upper 50s around Valdez and Cordova, and close to 60 degrees for most parts of southeast. Pribilofs in the lower 50s, and most of the chain not too far away from that, 53 out in Shemya. Overnight lows Friday morning, well, you can see as we get a little bit of cooler air in there, temperatures go into the 20s for Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse out toward Kaktovik at 27, one of the colder spots, 30 around Barrow, 45 for our friends in Shishmaref. Unalakleet, you're looking at mid-40s. Galena, a little bit milder than that. Fairbanks, mid-40s there. The Cook Inlet region, probably mid to upper 40s, 39 or so up around Healy, close to 50 around Kodiak, and not too much different around the Alaska Peninsula and Sandpoint, upper 40s to low 50s for many in southeast. High temperatures on Friday, still fairly mild for south central, southwest, rebounds into the mid-50s. Nome 53, Barrow 38, Utqiagvik not to be forgotten there, and 37 around Kaktovik. Looks like Eagle about 53 degrees, and southeast in the capital city, looking at temps in the upper 50s and lower 60s for your Friday.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather now, a broad area of low pressure will be set up across Bering Sea and sweeping that moisture into the interior, southwestern Alaska, and all of that occurring while colder air is being pushed in across the North Slope. And that's where we see a lot of IFR across Thursday morning, across the Brooks Range, Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, across the Beaufort Seacoast, and well west into the ridge tops just above the Kobuk and Noatak valleys. For southeast, we still have kind of an onshore flow. You'll notice the IFR situation all the way from Sitka and the outer coast into the Dixon Entrance and the Clarence Strait, and several other patches of IFR surrounding the dying front across the northern Bering and southwestern Alaska. As we get into Thursday afternoon, you'll notice a lot of blue on the map. That's MVFR, and IFR conditions will be spotty across parts of southeast, including ramping up into IFR for Chilkoot and White Pass and lingering across some of the southern outside entrances for southeast and also across the Brooks Range summits on the north side there as we get into the afternoon. You can't miss that thunderstorm symbol. That's across south central, and that is just ahead of the upper level low pressure system that's moving across southwest. So this will be where we have the best dynamics for lift in the atmosphere to make shower and thunderstorm activity possible. It's going to be pretty isolated, but there might be a spot around the Talkeetnas that develops. So keep your eye on that if you're flying through that region tomorrow. By Friday, that threat shifts to the east a little bit more over the Wrangell-St. Elias region and into western parts of the Yukon. You'll notice additional areas of IFR developing along the terrain for southeast. And back again is IFR for the North Slope, the Beaufort Seacoast, and also across regions near St. Paul, down to the central and western Aleutian chain. But MVFR pretty much rules the roost for just about all of Alaska, save for an area north of the middle Yukon and south of the Brooks Range summits. That area expands for VFR Friday afternoon, but you're still going to run into MVFR across the North Slope, the coastline, IFR just offshore of Point Barrow to Wainwright, MVFR across southwest, a large part of the Copper River Valley and the upper Yukon Valley and the Tanana Valley. South Central sees some improvement. Southeast is stuck under MVFR for most of the afternoon. And there's that pesky area of convection again, just offshore of central and northern parts of the southeast outer coast. IFR pushing back in with the next wave across the western chain. Here's your pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, as we saw, start out around IFR conditions there. Some improvement may be noted, but remember, we're going to rinse and repeat this as we get back into your Friday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, watching for some areas of convection as we get into the afternoon. The risk is low, but and also fairly isolated, but keep your mind on watching for convection, which means isolated but severe opportunities for icing and turbulence, of course, with worsening areas of visibility. Right now, the general trend is to go from IFR to MVFR. Rainy Pass looking to be at MVFR through most of the day. Windy Pass probably MVFR most of your Thursday. Isabel Pass also looking to hold at MVFR. Mentasta Pass marginal most of your Thursday. Tanita Pass also looking to be MVFR. Portage Pass probably holding at a marginal level there. The further east you go, again, you get into IFR. And Chilkoot and White Pass start out the day just fine, but conditions will be changing as we go through Thursday toward IFR, so plan accordingly. Here's a look at the freezing level chart. You'll notice levels between about 8,000 and 10,000 feet for most of southeast, the northern Gulf Coast, and many areas out west until you get just about west of the Alaska Peninsula, and then you're seeing levels between about 6,000 and 8,000 feet. For the interior, north of the Alaska Range, between 6,000 and 4,000 feet, and then north of the Brooks Range, you're cooling off quickly with the surface freezing line right there at Point Barrow all the way east to Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse. Icing potential is increasing, and those levels are dropping as well. Above 6,000 feet for the North Slope, watch for some considerable moderate here around the Beaufort Seacoast. Also across the upper Yukon Valley and out towards southwest, there might be some patches of better or increased chance for icing. That's going to stretch from about 8,000 to 10,000 feet across the southern third of Alaska. Most of the Gulf Coast is looking generally A-OK at this point. The jet stream has that low pressure system working right over south central Alaska. On the south side is that main jet core reaching up to 110 knots, high pressure to the south. Colder air trying to build in from the north on that Arctic jet, 95 knots they're coming into the coast. A broad westerly flow, though, is really in control of most of the state. You can see wind speeds from 30 to 50 knots across the southern half, about 20 to 25 across the northern half. A little bit more of a northwesterly push at 3,000 feet up north, but mostly a westerly flow for most areas. Stronger winds across southwestern Alaska at this level show up around 40 knots coming into Bristol Bay. Turbulence is right there then. Watch for areas of shower and thunderstorm activity near the Talkeetnas. Chop below 4,000 feet, considerable moderate for the Aleutians and around Shelikof Strait and Kodiak Island. Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. He is here and has been here many times to talk to us about weather satellites and how those can help Alaskans understand our weather, how we can do better detection, keep more people safe from things even like volcanic ash. But today, Eric, you're going to talk to us a little bit more about weather satellites and how that can keep Alaskans safe and protect our property from wildfire, right?
That's right, Dave. Today's topic is where there's smoke, there's fire. And thanks for having us back again to Alaska
Anytime.
Weather. Well, weather satellites have a lot of different instruments on them. It turns out that the electromagnetic spectrum has a lot going on in it, and only one part of that is visible light, what we see.
Right.
Weather satellites, of course, report that. Today's topic is wildfires.
Okay.
There are some people who say that in Alaska in the summertime you don't have severe weather. These people are usually from Oklahoma or somewhere, and F5 tornadoes tend not to occur in Alaska.
Right.
People have also said what we do have in the summer. What is Alaska's severe summer weather can be hydrology,
Right.
flash flood and erosion in the mountains and things like that, and fires, wildfires.
Absolutely.
Those were here in 2004, certainly remember that. We've got an example here from 2014. Now it was a quiet season overall, but in May, down on the Kenai Peninsula, we had a wildfire on the Funny River, and this is a satellite image from a satellite, a polar orbiter that went right over Alaska, and we can see the plume of smoke coming out of that fire on the Kenai, curling down. It's caught in the wind.
Right.
It goes down toward Kodiak Island, curves around. You can see it circulating around a low pressure system that's in the Gulf of Alaska.
It was a beautiful picture.
Oh my gosh.
Except there was a fire.
There's a fire there. The nice thing is with this satellite image, you can tell where the fire origin is, where the
Right.
smoke is coming from. And it's a color image. We're looking at the wavelength spectrum of about 0.4 to 0.7 micrometers or microns. That's what the human eye would see. If you were riding on the satellite and looked down, you could see this kind of an image.
Right.
So that's pretty nice. But it turns out there's more to the electromagnetic spectrum than just visible light.
Okay.
You've heard of infrared, ultraviolet, that kind of thing. If we move into longer wavelengths, let's go to one specifically, 3.7 micron.
Okay, 3.7.
Why worry about that one?
Okay.
Well, we've got an example here. 3.7, it turns out, happens to be very sensitive to a certain temperature range, temperatures where fires burn.
Okay.
And so we've got an example zoomed in a little more from that same Funny River fire down on the Kenai Peninsula, and we can see that you get up into a few hundred degrees Fahrenheit,
Right.
and that's where the colors are. We can see there on the Funny River fire to the west and to the east, almost a horseshoe shape there, is not only we're seeing where the fire is in a general sense, but specifically where's the active fire
That is where
front.
it's burning right now.
And it's
Amazing.
3.7 microns is the important temperature there.
Okay.
That's right.
So this is really important to firefighters on the ground, people that are making plans and directing the firefighters on where they need to go and cut the trenches and keep people safe.
You know it. If you want to fight that fire, you got to know where it is.
Okay.
You got to know the leading edge. We've also got a movie loop, nothing quite like animating it in time.
Yeah.
You can see the fire spreading out over time with a succession of film or succession of images. Now this is one channel, 3.7 micron. You know, we looked at that color smoke image before.
Right.
And that's actually a red, a green, and a blue. That's how you get color imagery. What if you took 3 different wavelengths in the infrared? You went from like 2.2 micron, 1.5 micron, up to 3.7. You mix them together, you get this other kind of color image, which is even a better way to sharply bring out the details of where that leading edge of the fire is.
Okay.
You'll note, though, in the infrared Guess what? We don't see the smoke. That's too bad. And on these movie loops, you can see the clouds go by. These channels can't see through clouds. The lesson is there's no one perfect solution. You got to have the visible, got to have some of that infrared single 3.7 channel, some of the infrared mixing to help get a different perspective. Another one, we've talked before about a fun channel called the day-night band.
Yes, one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, and in Alaska in the winter, it's great. We've got all this darkness. The day-night band is so sensitive to seeing light. You can see features that otherwise aren't available. Now in Alaska, when you have a forest fire, it tends to be light out all the time. It's our summer. But we can go down south to the Rim Fire in California in 2013. Now, okay, it was in California, not Alaska, but Alaskan crews went down to fight that fire, so we can talk about it here on Alaska Weather. Here we have a 3.7 micron channel shot of the rim fire, again, kind of a horseshoe shape, showing that active fire front down there. And then we'll look again to the day-night band, the visible light, and then you can see how the fire is all bright. You can see the active fire front and actually the city lights over there too. Turns out that the cities, while they're active in a social sense, are not really hot in a fire sense. So they don't show up in the 3.7 micron. They're not hot like a fire is, but the fire in the cities look the same from a visible light perspective. And a fun thing here too is that we can see the smoke plume going north from the rim fire on the day-night band. So if we were ever to have, like in 2004 in Alaska, you get dark at night, we still had an active fire season that year. That was, you know, that really bad year. The day-night band didn't exist then, but if we had fires now in August, we could use it then. The lesson here is weather satellites, they offer many different wavelengths of light. Some are used for different purposes, and some of these we just looked at tonight are especially helpful here in Alaska to find and to track the behavior of these wildfires so the crews can go out there and do their jobs.
Sure. So a satellite toolbox for the firefighting crews and the fire weather forecasters, and it just underlines how important satellites are, especially for Alaska and our mission for the National Weather Service to protect life and property, and also to enhance the national economy. So wonderful stuff there, Eric. And people can look at pictures like this anytime by going to gina.alaska.edu. You'll find images there all around Alaska at various times of the year, and not just about fire weather, but volcanic ash and smoke and anything else you want to check out. They're always beautiful pictures and always interesting to look at no matter what time of the day. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We appreciate it and welcome you back anytime. For this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. See you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Moving on to your marine weather now, we're still looking at some pretty cold sea surface temperatures under some of the marginal ice up north around the Beaufort Sea, but you can see some warmer waters just to the west of Point Barrow. We still have plenty of ice in the region, though it continues to melt and shrink. A westerly wind will be moving some of that ice along, as you'll see in a moment. But we still have some very warm water inside of Norton Sound, around the southwest Capes, and certainly across the central and eastern Gulf there. Let's take a look at the ice conditions, and you can see this anytime at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice, as well as the previous slide. Notice that the high concentration ice north and east of Utqiagvik and north of Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse continues to shrink there. The marginal ice zone certainly found east toward Kaktovik, but low confidence here in what we're seeing because of the cloud cover that's been pretty persistent across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, according to our Alaska Sea Ice Program forecasters. Marginal ice extends to the north and west of Point Barrow there, and those are concentrations below 80%, but there's plenty of sea ice-free water to the north and east of this higher pack, and certainly along the Chukchi coast. Let's take a look at southeast now. Gusty winds developing inside the Lynn Canal, up to 40 knots there as we get into your Thursday. 5-foot sea expected there with a 25 knots sustained wind, easy for me to say. Southerlies across the central and southern parts of the inner channels, about 15 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas there. The outer coast, you're looking at generally light winds, a south and southwesterly flow, 10 knots with 6-foot seas. And as we get into Friday, things will change along the outer coast. A westerly flow is expected. 20 to 25 knots is showing there with about 9 to 12 foot seas, the strongest of which will be up north. Southerlies continue to blow in the Lynn Canal. Gusts not quite so bad there, but that shifts down to the Stevens Passage area. Clarence Strait looking at southerlies with 4 foot seas on Friday. For south central, inside of Prince William Sound, light winds 10 knots and 2 foot seas. South and southwesterlies coming up Cook Inlet 20 to 30 knots, the strongest of which will be outside of Kamishak Bay, and Kashamak Bay for that matter. And across the Barrens, 30 knots with 8 to 9 foot seas there. The higher seas out across the open waters of the Gulf, but as we see on Friday, that shifts eastward into southeast where we just saw. Westerlies blowing through Prince William Sound, stronger westerlies across the north and western Gulf outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance and Resurrection Bay. A wind settled down a little bit in Cook Inlet up north, but still looking at 20 to 25 across the southern half of Cook Inlet with 5 to 8 foot seas. For the west now, things get a little stormier out here, and we'll start to see gales moving back into the picture. South and westerlies for the Bering Sea coast into Bristol Bay, 25 knots with 8 foot seas. South and westerlies inside of Shelikof Strait with 6 foot seas. They're 9 foot seas as you head down past Sand Point and south and west of Castle Cape. For Friday, the seas settle down just a little bit there, 15 to 25 knots for the Bering Sea coast, 6 to 12 foot seas expected, 5 to 7 foot seas either side of Kodiak Island, 20 knot winds all the way down the Pacific coast with 20 knots coming out of the west around Sand Point for your Friday. For the Aleutian chain, higher seas north and west toward the Pribilofs. We'll look at that in a moment. South and westerlies for the Aleutian chain, 25 to 30 knots. Most areas looking at 11 to about 14 foot seas on Thursday. As we get into Friday, slightly better weather. Northwesterlies out of the western chain, you're looking at 8 foot seas there. A westerly flow for most of the central chain, 20 knots with 8 to 10 foot seas for the most part, and 7 to 14 foot seas there on either side of Unalaska to Nikolsky with a west and southwesterly flow around 20 to 25. For the west coast, northeasterly winds coming in. A front moving into the YK Delta will continue to sit fairly close to the coast and over the coast. 15 to 30 knots there brings us about 3 to 12 foot seas. And again, you can see the stronger winds and higher seas out around the Pribilofs, 35 knots with a 19 foot sea there for Thursday. That improves on Friday. Low pressure sitting very close to Nunivak Island and the Pribilofs, 15 to 20 knots with an 11 foot sea near the Pribilofs and a northerly flow coming into that low. It's going to be colder, 2 to 6 foot seas there on that 10 to 15 knot wind. For the north slope, behind the front, at least one of them, 10 to 15 knots there with 2 to 3 foot seas in ice-free waters, and north and northwesterlies for the Chukchi coast, also looking at generally small seas, but an onshore and northerly flow. That continues and picks up on Friday. Westerlies for the Chukchi coast, 20 to 25 with 5 to 6 foot seas there. Southwesterlies around Utqiagvik and westerlies over the ice itself, 15 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. Let's recap the weather. It's going to snow in the Brooks Range as we get into tonight and likely the next couple days with several waves of colder air coming in from the north and west. Look for a couple inches of snow generally east from the Dalton Highway and another round developing as we get into Thursday and Friday and perhaps another one behind that. Each one could add at least a couple inches of snow and maybe as much as 6 with the second round that's coming in later in the week. Rainfall is possible around parts of southeast. There's a brief opportunity for a shower or even a storm around south central. That shifts to the outer coast of southeast as we head into Friday as an upper level low is passing across south central and southeastern Alaska. Have a good night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.